Kiawah Development Partners, owners of a 150-acre sand spit on Kiawah's southwestern tip, are planning to build 50 houses on this barrier island. Because the land is not eligible for federal funds, including beach renourishment projects and government-subsidized flood insurance, the developers sought to have the land removed from the protected area. On August 28, 2008, their bill was rejected due to public protest, but they still plan to build.
I'm Nancy Vinson, Program Director with the Coastal Conservation League. The Conservation League is a nonprofit advocacy organization dedicated to protecting the cultural and natural resources of the South Carolina Lowcountry.
My name is Orrin H. Pilkey, and I'm a coastal geologist. And I am a professor emeritus, James B. Duke Professor Emeritus in the Nicholas School of the Environment at Duke University.
I'm Mary Edna Fraser, and I'm an environmental activist with my art. I work for Orrin Pilkey and the South Carolina Coastal Conservation League because I know every individual makes a difference. Notice the thin link of sand that provides all access to the south end of this barrier island. The development site is the highest elevation revealed by the green plant growth. A bulkhead to stop erosion would be installed on the inland side of the site, but has no guarantee of longevity. Buyers may not know the historical mobility of this land. The ground on which the houses would sit, much of its sand, changes easily in a large storm. Beach towns have seen spectacular loss caused by hurricanes on the East Coast. Climate change would bring more frequent overwashes and an increased rate of erosion to these already dynamic areas. Another barrier island like Kiawah, just 2 islands to the south, is Edisto. Eddingsville Beach was Edisto's first resort community. Before the Civil War, there were about 50 private homes, 2 chapels, and a billiard parlor, and at least 10 cottages or fishing shacks among the dunes beyond the village. 2 rows of houses with wide verandas face the ocean on one side and overlook the marsh on the other. Eddingsville was in its prime when 3 consecutive hurricanes hit the island. The last, the Great Sea Island Hurricane of 1893, destroyed every building in the town. The village is now 1/4 mile off the shore. Bricks and pottery, evidence of the buildings, are still washing up on Edisto Beach. See that little spit of green? Mm-hmm. That's where they want to put the 50 houses.
I mean, it's just that little dune field between those 50 houses being on an island or having a road.
You guys are pretty selfish to make people, not allow people to build houses in that beautiful site. Wouldn't you like to have a house there? It's assumed that nobody uses the shoreline here. That's why you can get away with bulkheads. And that's a problem, both North and South Carolina. We bulkhead 30 miles of our shoreline every year.
Wow. And so the road for this development would go right through the park here.
Dutch say that this will be underwater in 40 years.
Oh, really?
They're say 2.5 feet by 2050. Man, you're so lucky. So lucky that these islands are just now being looked at. They're being looked at worldwide, by the way.
Oh yeah. See deer tracks, big deer tracks. What kind of other tracks?
That is raccoon.
Yeah, this is a raccoon.
Here is a good, healthy beach. On the other side, we saw a very strongly eroding beach. And on this side, we have a beach that's kind of accreting, more or less, slowly. But all this will change when the next big storm comes.
If you look back at the maps from 1661, you'll see the channel, which is way down there, has moved many times and cut through to form an island.
This is a very dynamic spit, and meaning that it changes its width and changes its length. And what happens historically is every 30, 40 years or so, an inlet is cut through here, and all the sand down in that direction gets washed over into Seabrook Island, and then the spit is rebuilt from sand that's coming down in this direction. So it cuts through the spit, much of it disappears, and then it all comes back again in a matter of a decade or two. So that's the big picture of this. But in general, there's a strong longshore transport of sand from this direction to that direction by the waves that are coming in at an angle.
And really it is just sand dunes. You can see on the aerial photographs, it's just dune ridges. It's been very dynamic over the last couple centuries, as most ends of barrier islands tend to be, as they come and go, often suddenly in response to a hurricane. They're great changes, and then more slowly over time with the forces of the winds and the waves and the erosional factors from the river behind them. And this is what's commonly known as a recurved spit, and Dr. Pilka could probably talk about that better than I could.
This should never be developed. This is crazy. At some point, you're going to have to deal with an inlet that's blocking your access back off the spit, and you're going to have to fill in the inlet and so forth and so on, and you're going to spend a lot of money nourishing the beach because it's going to be going back and forth in a very dynamic fashion, and nourishment is going to bring in foreign sand, probably often of poor quality, and it just makes no sense to deal with such a very dynamic feature as this, especially in a time of rising sea level. This is madness. Nothing over here is 5 feet in elevation, and we're certainly going to have a 5-foot sea level rise by the end of the century, but it doesn't. Even if the sea level just goes up a foot or so, the storms are going to overwash this more and more often. That's another problem, that the houses here will be subjected to overwash, and of course very exposed to hurricanes. It's crazy. It just doesn't make any sense.
So these beaches are moving, and very rapidly. From the air, I've been looking at it for 30 years now, and the insanity of building on a spit of land that is meant to move and sway is obvious, I think.
They wanted to be able to get federal flood insurance, because without it, $1 million house would cost around $40,000 or $50,000 a year for private insurance. With it, it's only $1,600 a year, and that gives you $250,000 worth of coverage, which might be enough to take care of the first big storm, the first medium-sized storm.
Yeah.
That just means they'll be responsible to replace the road, the water line, the sewer line, the power lines, instead of being declared a federal emergency area after every storm.
Yeah.
So they can spend the 10 to 20 million each time.
They'll also be
gets washed
responsible for
out.
nourishing the beach.
Yes.
Yes. And for keeping, I wonder if they'll still put up that seawall. So this hasn't necessarily stopped development.
No, the developer's been saying all along he's going to develop it regardless. But really, I mean, I think it may be harder. Maybe it's harder to get a mortgage even if you don't have, or it surely would lower the value of the house if you're paying $40,000 to $60,000 a year for flood insurance, and that's got to have some impact on a $3 to $4 million house. Maybe not enormous.
Yeah. Engineers and developers think that a natural beach is made up of sand, so put some sand out there and you got a natural beach. But far, far from it, far from it. We have made beaches in North Carolina where turtles can't possibly nest because of the gravel on the beach and so forth that wasn't there before. But it's not visible. The destruction is not visible. You can't see dying organisms all over the place. There's a whole ecosystem there, including fish offshore, ranging from the big white shark to the little teeny myofauna between the grains. That's all part of an ecosystem that is totally destroyed. The stated purpose of beach nourishment is always to provide storm protection, but in reality, it's usually to bring back the beach and to stop shoreline erosion rather than storm protection. If you really want to protect from a storm, you build up these dunes. But when you dump sand on the beach, you kill everything on the beach. There's not a thing left alive. There's a lot of issues with beach nourishment, not the least of which it costs at least $1 million a mile for a good beach. And it's an extraordinary misnomer, which is so typical in the coastal engineering profession. They're trying to play games with us. It should be called dredge and fill. It used to be called replenishment, which is a little better than nourishment. Now it's almost always nourishment, but it could be called dredge and fill, and I call it either dredge and fill or artificial beach. If I could think of an uglier term, I'd use it. What would be an uglier term?
Shifting sands at taxpayer expense? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
A tax beach. A tax beach.
Wow.
This is one of the many issues in our backyard. Without the Coastal Conservation League, we might not even be aware of this plan to develop or have a means to oppose it. We need this environmental watchdog to help us protect our natural resources.